Welcome back to the channel, guys. Today we're going to talk about one lure that you should never go springtime bass fishing without, and that is going to be the jerkbait. It's an excellent choice throughout the course of spring, early pre-spawn, late winter, excellent time to throw it then, and even shallow diving versions will work almost all the way up until the spawn. If you even want to throw flukes in there as well, they'll work throughout the spawn, but today we're just going to be talking about a hard bait jerkbait here. So we're going to go through all the information you need to know: rod, reel, line setup, bait selection, and we're going to go out on the water and show you how to fish this thing. So stay tuned and let's get right into it. So the first thing we're going to talk about here is your rod and reel combo. Not necessarily super important. You can use a lot of different rod and reel combos for fishing a jerkbait. Your most important selection is actually going to be your line. So on here, you always want to use fluorocarbon line with a jerkbait. Since you want that bait to suspend, you want a line that will suspend or sink as well, and that's what fluorocarbon does. If you use monofilament or you use braid, those float, and that's going to kill the action on your jerkbait and get you less bites while you're out there on the water. So I have straight 12-pound fluorocarbon on here. The lighter you can go, the better. I probably should have went to 10. I actually had to put some lead on this bait to get it to suspend, just because it was ever so slightly floating, and you want it to either suspend or slowly sink. So the lighter the line you go, the better it will suspend. So should have went with 10. I have 12. It depends on your water temperature and a bunch of other conditions as well. So somewhere in the 8 to 12-pound test range is what you're looking for there on a jerkbait. You can go heavier if you want your bait to get shallower, but it will create less action in your bait because the line's not as limp, and it will also keep that bait from suspending as well as it should. But a lot of times if you want that bait to get shallower, you're fishing it shallower because the fish are more active, so you don't need it to suspend as much because you can work that bait a little bit quicker. Rod and reel I have here, this is a Shimano SLX DC. I also have a Corrado 150 MGL. Different reels. This is just one that I kept, but they're both 7 gear ratio. You want something you can pick up that slack quickly, but you're not using the reel to work the bait, and we're going to show you that while we're out there on the water today. Then for the rod, I have 2 jerkbait rods. They're both Icon topwater and jerkbait rods. One is a 6'9" medium extra fast, the other one is a 7-foot medium extra fast. They're pretty much exactly the same rod. This one's just 3 inches shorter, so I can use it around live scope a little bit more, but either one will work just fine. If you're a little bit shorter, the 6'9" might be better, so you're not slapping the water while you're jerking your jerkbait. But the 7-foot works just fine for me as well, fishing off the front deck of my boat. I usually have no problem hitting the water there. So that's the rod and reel setup, super basic there. You could probably use a 7-foot medium heavy or a bunch of other different rods as well. A 7-foot medium would work. It doesn't have to have the extra fast action. You can use a fast action. I probably wouldn't go with like a crankbait rod or a moderate action because it's not going to give you that snap in the tip to work that bait properly. I like the extra fast or fast action there for your jerkbait. So let's get into a little bit of bait selection here. There's a couple jerkbaits that I have with me here today. They're 6 Sense Provoke 106 jerkbaits. That's the ones that I've been using today. You can use Megabass, you can use Rapala Shadow Rap Shad, or the Shad Rap Deeps. Those are awesome jerkbaits as well, but you guys know that I do work with 6 Sense, and I really like their jerkbaits. The Provokes are awesome, and they're cheaper than Megabass. So they make 2 kinds here, and if you'd like to get any of these, I will link them below. You can use my code Quince. You'll save 10% off your entire order. The first option here being the shallow version. So this is going to be more for my largemouth fishing, when you're fishing around cover and wood, grass even, want to keep it over top of grass, fishing that bait really shallow. That's when I'm going to go with this guy right here. This is the one I've been playing around with a little bit today. I have it in a different color. It's a Pro Blue Scales color, but that's the one I've been throwing a lot for largemouth. And then we've actually been finding some largemouth out a little bit further off of some breaks, or when I'm fishing for smallmouth, I'm going to go with the 106 DD right here. This one has been my favorite for a while. Used it for smallmouth a lot last year, and then even some largemouth this year, like today. We're fishing around those breaks. Unfortunately, we haven't really caught any on it, but I can get them to chase it on live scope. They're just really not committing today. It's a very tough day of fishing. We have high bluebird skies, cold front after a big warming trend. and pretty much no wind. So they're having a hard time biting anything today, but we're really working for them. But that's the one we're using as well. When it comes to color selection, I keep it really, really simple. There's a few options that I keep in my box, and I just rotate through those. You don't have to get fancy with jerkbait selection. If you have perch in your lake, a perch color is a good one to have, but overall these colors will get it done no matter where you're at in the country. So your first color choice is gonna have to be some type of a ghost pattern. If you have really, really clear water, the ghost pattern is gonna be the one that I'm gonna go with most of the time, especially on sunny, calm days like this. Something ghost, even that Pro Blue Scales, that's still ghost with a little bit of flash in it. That color will work just fine in that clearer water. Then if you get some dirtier water, like really, really dirty water, that's what I'm gonna go with, like a bone color, a Spanish pearl color, or even like this one right here, the Table Rock Pro color, something that is all white and opaque. Awesome choice for that dirtier water. And then something as an in-between that I do have, these are all tangled together, but this is the Ghost Bone Minnow from 6th Sense. It's still opaque, but it's a very natural color. So that's one that I'll use in that in-between stained water type colors. And then the last one that you have to have, if you fish for smallmouth or even spotted bass, it does work for largemouth as well, is wabi sabi, and it's going to have that chartreuse belly. I've talked about this one a few times here. That chartreuse belly, especially when you're fishing for smallmouth in clear water, sometimes you can draw those fish up out of 30 or 40 foot of water to come get this bait because they can see that belly from a mile away. So that's a color you're going to have in your box as well. But those colors right there, I think that's like 4 jerkbait colors, realistically 3, like a white, a natural or translucent color, and the chartreuse, and you are good to go with those colors right there. If they're not biting that, they're probably not biting the jerkbait for the day. So now that we talked about all the gear that you need to actually go fish this thing, let's head out on the water. We'll show you how to fish it. We'll try to catch a fish, but like I said, those fish have been really hard to cooperate today, so we'll throw it around. We'll at least show you the technique, how to catch them on it, and maybe on your local lake, they'll be biting this bait a lot better. Sometimes a little bit of wind or some cloudy conditions will help this jerkbait bite a lot more in the springtime. So now that we talked about the gear you need to actually fish a jerkbait, let's go ahead and show you how to fish this thing. We'll be doing some smallmouth fishing with the jerkbait here very shortly, and they're much more cooperative on a jerkbait than these largemouth are today with these glass calm conditions. But all you're gonna do is make a long cast with this thing. What I like to do when my bait hits the water is I'll turn the reel handle 3 or 4 times just to get the bait down in the water column a little bit, and then go ahead and give it some gentle twitches. And these are some of the mistakes that I've made with a jerkbait over my years of fishing it. I've become much better with it. It's been one of the baits that I like to throw the least, and now I like to throw it the most. So the first thing you like to do, or the first thing that you need to do to make sure that you can get the most amount of bites with a jerkbait is you're gonna hold the bait, the reel loosely in your hand. I used to grip this thing, like death grip it, and try and work this bait. You don't need to do that. Just gently hold it in your hand, and you're gonna give it light twitches. If you have the right action rod, you should be able to just basically lightly twitch that bait, and it'll dart left, right, all over the place. It'll get the correct amount of action that you need in that bait. So the other thing you don't wanna do is reel and twitch at the same time like this. You can see when I'm hitting that bait, when I hit that, I get a bend in my rod, and that bend never releases, and that's just pulling the bait forward. You want that bend to release when you let go of that twitch. So I'm holding it lightly in my hand. I'm gonna reel it down 2 or 3 times in the water like I just made that cast, and then I'm gonna reel up my slack till I'm just about tight with the bait. Twitch, twitch, just gentle, just hit the bait and then give it slack. Hit the bait, give it slack, and it'll dart left, right. You can do a different number of twitches, however many you'd like when you're doing so. You can do 3 twitches, you can do 2 twitches and then a twitch at the end. You can do whatever you want. You can play around with your retrieve that way and see what your fish like. But you just want to gently hold it in your hand, give it a couple twitches like that, and then let that thing sit. And that's when the magic is gonna happen. I've learned especially early spring like this, I've fished tournaments, there's this wood up here on the bank. I'll give it twitches like that and then let it sit, and you'll be watching your line and it'll just slowly tighten up because that fish came up off the bottom or out of that laydown from nearby and saw it working and swam over and grabbed that bait and just started to ease on off with it. So sometimes you won't even feel the fish bite it until you go to twitch it again, but most of the times you won't even know that fish has that bait until you go to twitch it again, and that's where the hook set is involved. So the hook set is basically not a hook set with a jerkbait, so you're just gonna reel it down, and when you get bit, if you see your line start to tighten up, you can set the hook on the fish like that. But most of the times what's gonna happen is you're gonna twitch it, you're gonna be letting it sit there, you're not even gonna know that fish picked it up, or it'll pick it up when you twitch it that first time. Again, it'll react to that bait. You'll go to twitch it and you'll literally just hook the fish, and then you can go ahead and fight it like you would any other bait. That's the biggest thing with a jerkbait. You don't need to jig hook set these fish or do anything crazy like that. Give it some twitches. Gentle hook set. You got 9 treble hooks on there. It's going to get hooked somehow. I know a lot of times you'll be surprised how many fish can come off on a bait with 9 treble hooks on it, and it does happen. But for the most part, it's probably because you're putting too much pressure on the fish reeling it in. If you just give it that gentle twitch, get those hooks in that fish's mouth, make sure they're sharp, and then just play it nice and light back to the boat, you'll land those fish most of the time. So let's see if we can get one here. Unfortunately, we were not able to get a bass to cooperate today while throwing this jerkbait around. We will be doing some smallmouth fishing up on Lake Erie throwing this jerkbait around. So if you like to fish Lake Erie or for smallmouth, very near future, we're gonna go throw a jerkbait around for some smallmouth on Lake Erie. So stay tuned for that video. If you wanna see some other jerkbait fishing tips, go ahead and check this video out right here. Hit that subscribe button down below, and thanks for watching.